Thanks for listening in every week as we explore space exploration. If you like this podcast, there are two things you can do to make it better. One, consider a donation to WMFE. That's the station that produces this show, by visiting wmfe.org/support. And two, rating and reviewing this podcast on whatever platform you listen. Whatever you do, thanks. From the studios at WMFE in Orlando, Florida, this is the Space Exploration Podcast that asks the question, are we there yet? Hi, I'm Brendan Byrne. If you're listening to this podcast, you most certainly know my next guest. That's Commander Chris Hadfield. He's been to space 3 times, both on the shuttle and commanded the International Space Station. He was the first Canadian astronaut to walk in space, and he produced a rendition of David Bowie's Space Oddity from orbit, garnering millions and millions of hits on YouTube. Well, now that he's back here on Earth, Commander Hadfield continues to promote space exploration by speaking, producing YouTube videos, and writing. His newest book, called The Darkest Dark, is meant for youngsters and tackles the worryhoods of childhood like fear. Commander Hadfield spoke with me from New York about his career, trips to Mars, and his life back here on Earth, and I'm going to be honest with you, I was a bit starstruck talking with him. Commander Hadfield, thanks so much for speaking with me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Brendan. Nice to be speaking with you.
Well, Chris, when you're not in space, a lot of the work you do is getting young kids involved in space exploration, and with your latest book, The Darkest Dark, you're really focusing on getting young kids interested in space exploration, and I just want to ask, what drew you to focus on children?
As an astronaut, Brendan, I was 21 years an astronaut at NASA and at the Kennedy Space Center. And you of course, have your main job. You got to fly spaceships, and everyone counts on you to do that part right. But another part of being an astronaut is the symbology of it and what you represent for society and the inspiration and the idea of exploration. And you sort of become the embodiment of a lot of people's dreams. And we don't take it lightly. I mean, we're pretty serious. And so in all those 21 years serving in the astronaut corps, I spoke in, I can't even remember how many schools, 100, maybe 1,000 schools. And to me, it was really important because people will only make the choices in their life based on what they know is possible, what they know might be available for them. And so for me, to be able to take the things that I've been lucky enough to do, let people see them, especially at a young age, and then maybe start making more informed choices with their life, things they might want to do with their life that they didn't even know was on the menu. To me, that's a really important part of the job. It was the whole time I was serving, and since I've retired and left the astronaut corps, it's maybe even more important to me now. And that's why we wrote The Darkest Dark to address the whole idea of how you might someday accomplish something that you're dreaming of.
Right. The book kind of tackles, some normal fears that kids might have at that age, but you kind of put it in a much different light, right?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that's important to recognize early is that it's okay to be afraid. I mean, people think bravery and fear are opposites, but they're not. Fear is normal. Fear doesn't disappear. Fear is your natural, instinctive worry when your spidey sense is telling you that there's danger around, and that's okay. But what really defines your life is, what do you do with your fear? Do you let it just kind of smother you and you don't ever try anything, or is there a way to find your way through your fear in order to do something that you dream about, or something that's really important to you? And one of the normal fears that I think pretty much everybody has when they're little especially is fear of the dark. It's an instinctive, ancient fear. But at some point in your life, you start to find a way through it. And when setting out to write this I've written a couple other books for older people, but talking to a younger person, especially after all those years talking to kids in schools, I just thought the idea of how to work your way through fear, how to try and accomplish something you're dreaming of, even though inside you're kind of worried about it. I thought that was really important to address. And working with the two artists, the Fan brothers, they just did a wonderful job of making the book look a little bit fearful, but then also showing that there's a path through it to lead to some just magnificent events in life.
The illustrations are absolutely beautiful. If you haven't seen the book, it's pretty incredible to see.
Yeah, these two brothers, Eric and Terry Fan, they're kind of new to book illustration. They've been drawing for years and years. They were sort of afraid themselves. They didn't think they could make a living, but they kind of took a chance, and we found them and working together. I'm just delighted. To me, this book just tells the story exactly like I hoped it would, as I did speaking in so many schools over the years. And it's the type of book that you get to the end and you want to go back to the beginning and work your way through it again. So I am very, very pleased that I was lucky enough to work with Eric and Terry in putting this book together.
Now, as you mentioned, you have written some other books, including An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth, geared more towards an older audience for that book. What were some of the challenges for writing for this kind of age group and talking to the younger kids, as you say?
Well, whenever you're trying to, speak to somebody else, Brendan, you always got to figure out why, in my mind. Why am I talking to this person? What is it we're trying to communicate? What is the information we're trying to get to each other? And then what language does the other person speak? Because each of us is subtly different culture. And, maybe someone has a different mother tongue. That's obvious. But if you're speaking to someone who's 20 years older than you or 20 years younger than you, they have a slightly different vocabulary and a different sensibility, I guess. And so to speak to a 5-year-old, how do you phrase things? How do you say things so that they get it, so that they like it, and so that it stays in their head afterwards and they think about it a little bit? And so I think that's one of the big challenges in putting together a children's book is really doing my best at my particular stage of life in remembering and looking through my own kids' eyes and now my granddaughter's eyes and thinking, how can I present these ideas so that they'll really let their imagination run free and they'll get what I was trying to impart. And then later in life, maybe a couple years later, when they are afraid of something, some of the ideas of this book will come in like a voice into their head, reminding them of a way to find their way through. That's really my objective in trying to express it this way. And hopefully, I'm amazed. The book hasn't even come out barely, and yet it's already in 6 languages. It's all around the world. The reception's been great. So hopefully other people are agreeing that we phrased it about right and that kids are going to like it.
Well, Commander Hadfield, what's it like to chat with these kids that, might be the next generation of you, might be the next astronaut? What's it like when they come up to you and say, hey, I want to be just like you when I grow up?
Well, what's a good reminder to myself always is that some of them will be. Absolutely. There's one of the astronauts who's in the Corps right now who came to me as a teenager and said, what do I do? He came to me a long time ago when he was in high school. How do I become an astronaut? And I said, well, the odds are terrible. You probably won't be an astronaut, but you sure won't be one if you don't try. And so maybe try and do this and this and this and this. And he loved the whole idea and pursued all those and eventually got selected. And now he's in the astronaut corps. So I remind myself all the time, everybody I'm talking to, this is real and important and an option for them. And the younger they are, the more options they have. So I try and take the time, speak in the right language with the right person, and really listen to what their dreams are, and then try and use the best of my experience to maybe offer up some counsel and ideas. And the opportunity's never been bigger. I mean, there are more astronauts in the world now who are training and flying than and having a chance to go live in space for 6 months at a time. Kate Rubins is living up on the space station right now, and Peggy Whitson's getting ready to launch, and she's going to command at the space station again. We've been living in space for 16 years. We're on our way to the moon and Mars. There's huge opportunity. So I think it's a pretty good time to let people see that, and then to start maybe making decisions about how to change themselves to pursue what's important to them.
Aside from writing these children's books, you do a lot to garner interest in the space program for older folks too. I know I was glued to your Twitter feed and always awaiting new photos coming from you while you were on board the ISS. But do you feel an added level of responsibility because of your celebrity in promoting the space program and space exploration in general?
Well, I actually thought about it. What's interesting, Brendan, is since I came back from space after my 3rd space flight, the number of people that follow me on social media has more than doubled since I landed. So it's a good reminder to me that it's not just the space flight itself that people find interesting, but the ideas, and the thoughts and the conclusions and the observations. And when you ask what, being a celebrity, I think I didn't intend to become a celebrity, but I think it's important. What are you being celebrated for? What is it that people want from you? And for me, I think it's the ideas and the opportunity and the sort of the embodiment of possibility, but also the facts and the reality and how does it work and what can life offer beyond the transient stuff, but the long-term exploration of ideas and thought and the rest of the universe. And so I see myself in that role, partially educator, partially kind of a role model of possibility, partially entertainer, and all of those wrapped up together. And I love it. I see the results and the changes in people that I speak with, which is extremely gratifying, and it's what motivated me to write The Darkest Dark.
Now, you spoke of entertainer, were you shocked by how many YouTube views that music video received down here on Earth?
Oh, sure. I mean, I've been a musician. I fronted bands. When I was an astronaut at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, I fronted bands for almost 20 years there, and I've been a musician my whole life, but always just, it wasn't my core job, but I love it, and I love the creation of music and all that, and so I've always sang and played. And on the space station, I wrote a whole bunch of music and released an album where we give all the profits to music charities. But my son said, there's a big clamoring on the internet, Dad, to record a version of Space Oddity by David Bowie. And I just thought, why would I do that? But he said, trust me, people will see what you're doing more clearly if you can express it through an iconic, artistic sort of way. And it only took me a couple hours. I sang the song a couple times, and then I floated around and filmed myself, singing it. And then some musicians on the ground and got permission from David Bowie, and then my son edited it together. It was just kind of a lovely personal family project, and it's been wild to see the reaction. The hundreds of millions of people have seen it. But to me, the best part is that David Bowie loved it. He sent me congratulatory notes, and it just put a huge smile on his face. And he was towards the end of his life, of course. He knew he was dying. And so for me to be able to take a song that he wrote back when he was 19 or 20, and to perform it in the place that he always dreamed of, and for him to have that sort of as a gift in the last couple of years of his life, to me, that was the sweetest part of all.
That's a really cool story. I like that. Well, Commander Hadfield, you've had a huge part in the Shuttle Program throughout your career. What was it like seeing that program come to its end and seeing the future of the space program and where we were going with our exploration efforts?
It's great. I mean, to me, I'm so proud of what we did with the Shuttle Program. It's such a complicated vehicle. 2/3 of everybody who's ever flew in space flew on the shuttle. And we flew that vehicle longer than just about any vehicle ever operates. Nobody's driving a car that was designed in the 60s and built in the 70s, at least not for anything except nostalgia. And after the Columbia accident in 2003, I mean, how could we ever convince ourselves to fly the shuttle again? And yet we found the courage. We found the ideas that would allow us to safely try and fly it again and muster our energies. And then we completed the whole program. We'd never hurt another person, and built the International Space Station and did what we promised and opened up the door for all the vehicles that are being worked on now. And hopefully within a year or maybe slightly more, we'll have Boeing's new man-rated or human-rated vehicle flying out of Florida, and SpaceX's new vehicle. There'll be Americans launching on American ships from American soil here shortly. To me, the shuttle was a tremendous vehicle and a great legacy, and I was so heavily involved with the whole thing. And just thinking about it makes me smile, just how well we did.
Commander Hadfield, you talk about fear in the darkest dark, and then you brought up that Columbia disaster, and then just recently we had that SpaceX explosion. How do you, as someone who works in those programs and knowing the implications of these vehicles and what could happen with them. How do you deal with that unknown, that there could be something bad that happens? How do you do that every day?
Well, Brendan, you're just like the little boy in the book looking into the dark and feeling sort of a fuzzy sort of fear, but not finding a way through the fear. That's kind of a very natural human state. But I think if you want to accomplish something worthwhile, you have to take a risk. Anything in life, getting married, going to university, getting a job, learning to drive, learning to play guitar and stand up on stage, anything you do has risk. The real key is, how do you get past your fear and then understand the actual danger that's at the core of your fear, and then take the risk so that you can do something. And that applies to asking somebody on a date or launching a rocket ship. I mean, it's all just human nature. And you have to recognize that things are going to go wrong. You have to get over that, I think, at the beginning. Occasionally, this is not going to go the way we want. That's part of risk. If it was all guaranteed, there wouldn't be any risk. But everything worthwhile carries risk. And I think the best way to deal with it is to go, okay, this is worth taking a risk for. And now that changes my whole job. My job isn't just to sit and shiver in the dark. My job is to learn all of the dangers and become as good and expert and knowledgeable and capable as anybody could possibly be at the actual dangers, and then go do this thing and make it happen. And once in a while, it's not going to go right. But that's not a reason to do nothing. That's kind of a reason to work harder. And to me, that's the very essence of life and success itself, is finding your way past the fears. And I gave a TED Talk on it, and it's sort of an recurring theme in my first book, The Astronaut's Guide. But it was very much the heart and soul of why I wrote The Darkest Dark, because I want young people to see that idea as early as possible.
I just want to pick your brain quickly about our direction in this, this goal of exploring Mars and putting, humans on the surface of Mars. Do you think that this is the right direction in exploration? Do we need to put humans on that surface to say that, hey, we've successfully explored this planet, or can we just do it with robots that we've got out there now?
Yeah, I really don't think that the way to look at it is to say the purpose is to put humans on the surface of Mars. That's I think that's way backwards. I think the purpose is to understand the universe. That's what we're trying to do. And sometimes robots can give us good information. They can tell us what temperature it is, or what the air pressure is, or what a rock looks like. But that's hardly a human interpretation of something. Like if you want to go to a great museum. You want to go to the Louvre in Paris and see the Venus de Milo and see the Mona Lisa. You don't send a robot in to take a picture of it and send you the picture, because then you miss almost everything. Yeah, you'll get the picture, but that's way different than being there as a human being and walking around it and thinking and interpreting and evolving your thought and looking at it all different ways, and then scheming and plotting and integrating that new information into the cumulative human experience. That's entirely different. And so if we view exploration as the simple act of putting a person somewhere, as if somehow that's the measure of success, then it's doomed to failure. Instead, to me, it is the steady cumulative increase of understanding of the world and universe around us. That is the goal. And it'll always be a combination of reading about it, of looking at what we know already, of sending out robots to get us some information, and then eventually going there in person to really get the meat and the understanding of that place. And that's what we've done all around planet Earth, including Antarctica and the Arctic. It's what we've done on the moon initially. We haven't gone and lived there yet, but we've just sent probes and initial people to walk around. We moved to the space station almost 16 years ago. We've been living in space continuously for 16 years, and eventually we'll have learned enough that we can continue to go further. And to me, that's inevitable, inexorable, and absolutely fundamental to being human.
Commander Hadfield, you've got your books. You've got The Darkest Dark coming out. What's next for you? You going to keep writing?
Oh, all kinds of stuff. I'm working on writing another book for more of an adult audience. I just came back from the high Arctic. We have a project called Generator, which is sort of a combination of exploration and science and comedy and art. And I took 10 people with a huge social media presence up to the very high Arctic, almost to the North Pole. And they're all reporting back now on YouTube and Instagram and photo and Twitter and writing and music. And so to me, that idea of making the unknown accessible, and not just to the people who are there, but using technology to try and better understand life and better understand the world. And so I teach at university. I work with schools all the time using Skype. I'm on space advisory boards and consult with NASA and the Canadian Space Agency. I play a lot of music. I play with symphonies and do things, and then I speak all around the world. But to me, they're all the same, Brendan. They're all the rare experiences that this particular person has had that I've had, and then how do they shape my perception of the world, and then how do I share those experiences and perceptions in order to maybe help other people make different decisions with theirs. To me, it's all part and parcel of the same thing, and what we're all trying to accomplish. And yes, so I'm nowhere near done yet, and I'm really enjoying every step of the way, and I'm immensely proud of this book.
And we should say on the short term, Friday at 2 o'clock, you'll be at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. Are you giving a reading there?
Well, more than that, Brennan, I'm going to give a talk. I'll talk about a bunch of things, some of the stuff you and I have discussed here, but some other ideas. And then, I'll show some images and talk about where what I've done. And then, I'll do a reading. So I think it'd be really suitable probably for all ages, especially kids that are interested in this book, and then a chance to meet people afterwards, and if people want to shake hands, take a picture, sign a book, or whatever, all that'll be going on. And to do it at the Kennedy Space Center is just perfect. It's where I left Earth twice, came back to Earth once there, landed once in California and once in Kazakhstan, but I landed at the Kennedy Space Center. I've flown T-38s there. I worked there for a few years supporting shuttle flights, so it's a spaceport. We have seaports and airports, but Kennedy is a spaceport. And so I love going there, and I'm looking forward to being there. I think it's Friday at 2 o'clock I'll be there.
Yeah, we'll have the details on the website. So if you are in the area, definitely don't miss that. I've been speaking with Commander Chris Hadfield. His new book, The Darkest Dark, is coming out, and he'll be giving a reading and a talk at the Kennedy Space Center on Friday at 2. Commander Hadfield, this was an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for chatting with me.
My pleasure. Nice to speak with you, Brad. Hopefully I'll get a chance to see you in person next time.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode. For details on Commander Hadfield's visit here to Kennedy Space Center, visit our website, wmfe.org/Are We There Yet? I'll post those details if you're in the area. Support for Are We There Yet comes from the listeners of this station, WMFE. You can follow the show online. We're on Twitter at AWTYMars, or reach out to me in the Twitterverse. I'm at Space Brendan. Leave us a review on iTunes. That's how more people learn about this podcast. Are We There Yet is a production of WMFE. Our theme music was composed by Kevin McLeod. For more space news, visit us online at wmfe.org/space. As always, I'm Brendan Byrne. Thanks for listening.
Detach from station and may God's love be with you. This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade, and the papers want to know whose shirts you wear. But it's time to guide the capsule if you dare. This is Major Tom to ground control. I've left forevermore, and I'm floating in a most peculiar way, and the stars look very different today. For here to do.